Lapse the steering wheel here. Give me the steering wheel. Hey, steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to him. Come on! Whoa!
Your leg, mate, please. Your leg hip.
How the f*** is this possible?
I'm driving like a grandma. Get that, Ralph? Did you hear me? From the radio. The race. Ralph, acknowledge. Now, come on, close him down and kill him. We've got a lunatic on the track down the hanging straight.
I am so annoyed.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May. Channeling the Glen. We'll get into that. I promise. This is Todd. You know who it is.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here on race weekends.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's what we do on race weekends. But before doing that, I have to actually go find a real race car driver.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, welcome
Yes.
back. I should have said not a professional. I should have said the sporting manager of a race-winning team at Watkins Glen this weekend. He took number one, baby. That was great.
Number one, baby. Yes, it was. Yeah. At the Glen of all places. What a great track, right?
Yeah, the Glen. Yeah,
Yeah.
great track.
The 6 hour of the Glen is a classic track. I mean, classic
Yeah.
race. So it was a classic Glen race. Just everything thrown out, everybody. You know, we had obviously we had some downs, but yeah, the major up was coming out.
Well, you guys recovered from a penalty, right?
Yeah, penalty and a couple of snafus, but we made some good calls, you know. But I think everyone down the pit lane did at that point.
Yeah.
The main thing is we were competitive the whole time, and we stayed in the hunt. And when it came down to it, we were in the right place at the right time, and we used it.
It's great because you guys came off a tough 24-hour Le Mans,
right?
And that was a better pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But to come right back at it and have a win this weekend is awesome.
It was. Yeah, I mean, as I said to everyone, I said, the whole team needed this. Obviously we got two sides of the 23 and 27. They had a wreck. Unfortunately, we had the wreck at Le Mans. Jesus, that's a lot of money. But the whole team needs it, and they pulled it off. And Alex, obviously, he was driving the car, not driving the car when it wrecked, but driving the car that got wrecked at Le Mans, and so it was great to see him in the victory circle. Yeah,
it is great. Even Aston Martin corporate's pretty excited about it.
They're pretty excited. Yeah. I think
excited.
This might have been the first win for the Evo car. I'm not sure, but it's certainly the most prestigious win for that car so far.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. Yeah. That is awesome news.
Good times.
Super excited. You texted me a picture of the trophy, which is great.
Yeah.
Picture of the car. Yeah. It looked heavy.
They're no 2-bit trophies, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
That's a good piece of thing to put on your shelf. You have to put a
hefty
glass. Shelf to hold it up.
Yeah. So everybody wants to know, where does that trophy go?
Oh, Ian, I guess. I don't know. I know it's you. Some of them go to the drivers. The drivers take their own.
Yeah.
And the team there's a team trophy also when you win. So the drivers get theirs and the team gets its. Yeah. And the trophy cabinet is filling up. But
Ian's sitting in Arizona with his Rolex and his trophy case.
I got some hat that someone dropped off the podium. It's okay. I'll take it.
Ian puts up with you, so he just gets you like a Disney T-shirt or something you can wear.
Yeah, a Coke, pack of Reds, and a hat signed by somebody. Yeah.
That's right, pack of Reds and a Hershey bar. There you go. Good job, boy from Essex.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Good.
Well, somehow you managed to squeeze in the Spanish Grand Prix from Barcelona. You managed to squeeze that in.
I did, not live, obviously, but that was happening at the lead up to the start of the race. So I got to see it later on.
There was this sort of theory out there as we headed into Barcelona that they felt like, look, Red Bull dominant at the beginning of the year, dominant all last year. Maybe it was just kind of like the last 3-4 tracks. didn't really flatter the Red Bull chassis so much. And once they got back to Europe on more traditional circuits with lower curbing, that the Red Bull would kind of reestablish its true pace and dominance again. And, we'll see a return to form. That was sort of the theory, because, there's those that said, oh, no, we've known since Miami. But there's others that thought, man, this is a pretty drastic turnaround from winning races by 30 seconds to winning races by 2 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. And so the conventional theory was they'd bounce back. These tracks in Europe, the curbs are lower because there's a lot of MotoGP and bikes on them, and that this might make the point. But, Paul, on Saturday, qualifying certainly didn't suggest that might be the case. Yeah. Although when it got down to the fantasy picks on Saturday, I picked Max to win because even though Lando took a brilliant pole position, I kind of felt like on the long run race pace, Red Bull's probably the quicker car, certainly in the hands of Max Verstappen. And so that's kind of, I hedged my bet. So I had Max, Lando, and then I think I picked Carlos for hometown hero and blew that pick. But
somebody hit me. Somebody.
Yeah, somebody hit me, man. I was banking on I'm not saying I was banking on the return of that dominance by Red Bull, but I did think that over the balance of a race distance that I kind of felt like Red Bull would still pull it out. Not bragging that I was right. I'm just suggesting that the gap they enjoyed early in this season may not be there, but their overall pace might be just slightly better. But what's your feelings heading into this race weekend with expectations, then coming out of this race weekend? Do you think we're there or thereabouts?
I think we're there or thereabouts. I mean, we do know that historically the Red Bulls pulls it a bit closer in qualifying and then still dominated the race. So I think it definitely is a lot closer, which is allowing Norris on a perfect lap to beat Max. So I think it's real for sure. And I think Max and the Red Bull crew are having to pull everything out to be competitive. But Max is a phenomenal driver, right? And the Red Bull team have a lot of good stuff, good people there. But the barometer always is Perez. So I think definitely all those other teams have pulled up the bootstraps and got close, and I think it's going to be close all year. And I think just this race, Max was able to eke out enough. And I think, just what it's so close now that any little thing that doesn't quite go according to plan, like Norris's charge to try and get back up, you lose a couple of seconds there, can be the difference between winning and losing at this point, which is great to see. Very exciting. I mean, 4 teams can still win. I still believe at any track we're going to go to, one of these 4 teams can still win a race. So it's turned into a phenomenal season, really. Yeah, I kind of feel like we are in for a cracker of a season, potentially. And, I was thinking about it over the weekend, Paul. It's Sunday night, actually, and I was thinking about the development arcs of each of these teams, and it's probably easier to sort of key in on McLaren's because I think the men and women at Woking have done an amazing job, and Zach. And, you say, well, McLaren's on fire right now, literally on fire in their hospitality, their hospitality area caught on fire. Thankfully, nobody was injured in that. But when you look at last year, remember they hit the ground, a dog of a car. Zach said, we aren't going to find any real pace until after summer break. And they did. And it turned their season around. And I would say that evolutionary arc that really kind of started after summer break in 2023 continued through the winter, that development. And they've continued to bite chunks out of their deficit all through the beginning of this year up until Miami with new wings, new floor, when they brought that after Miami. And I think that evolution is a little easier to track, whereas you look at Ferrari, they seemed to progress a little bit last year, seemed to progress a little bit this year, but haven't maybe had that market big jump like we saw with McLaren. The other one is Mercedes, Paul. This is a car that they had to just go back to the drawing board on last year. And, their pace at the beginning of this well off the mark from Ferrari. And
I don't know what it is they discovered, what they've found, James Allison and team, but they've done a brilliant job with the upgrades on this car.
Yeah.
Not suggesting they're going to instantly win races, but it certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons with McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull.
Yeah. For some reason, I know a couple of people around that. So it seems that somewhere in the front wing on that Mercedes is where they found some kind of magic juice, that they've been missing the whole time. And this obviously spent a lot of time trying to find it. Now they found it. Now they're reaping the rewards.
Exploit it.
And I know sometimes even on the race reviews or in some other letters you get that people are speculating about the Red Bull fine and the retardation in their development. Maybe that is what's going on. You know, I mean, if you're a team that's used to be able to go guns a-blazes at it, and you're being constricted to a considerable percentage less, it's obviously going to have an effect. Else, you wouldn't have been doing all the other work in the first place. So maybe it's a knock-on effect where they've kind of clawed back Red Bull's ability to keep extending its advantage, while the other teams have also kind of crept up just over the years of consistent rules, etc., to get closer. I mean, that's the way Formula One ebbs. You go a certain amount of years with stability in the rules, and the grid contracts, and obviously we're going to get ready for it to explode again. Sadly, So it's I think it's a cyclical thing as well as something maybe to do with the Red Bull penalties. That's
a good point, Paul. Who, by the way, Paul is nursing a little bit of a head cold, so
a little bit
from this weekend. But he, you got to play hurt, Paul, and you showing up and playing hurt. You won. Well, you single-handedly won the race at the Glen team through all your.
It was just me. I was telling Ross, turn right, brake, turn left,
brake,
gas,
brake
gas, gas, wrong, gas.
Right. No, but you bring up a really good point. I know last year a lot of people made a lot of the because Red Bull was doing well last year, very dominant. Everybody was like, "Oh yeah, reduction of wind tunnel time, haha." It's not having any impact on Red Bull, and I think Christian Horner said, "No, it will. It's going to be a big impact on us."
Yeah.
A lot of people discounted that as overhyping that, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you bring up a really good point, and maybe we're seeing that drastic reduction in wind tunnel time limiting their ability to develop in the way that they would normally have or what they would want to. And the other teams with significant more wind tunnel time being able to develop in a more rapid prototype way. And we could be seeing the difference there. So it's a really good point. Let's jump into the teams as they finish. We'll talk through them. We'll start with Red Bull with the victory. Sergio Perez, P8, Max Verstappen in P1. Max only missed pole by 200ths, but ultimately it was that start and early pace and getting back around George that got him into position to control the race, manage his tires, and then manage the gap. But he also, in the meantime, had to execute the team strategy to perfection, which he did, which is becoming a bit of a hallmark of Max Verstappen behind the wheel. That said, he admitted after the race that he had to push a lot more because the McLarens and Lando were very fast. And he even said that the McLaren were better on their tires than Red Bull was in regards to degradation. And that, I think that in and of itself may bury a little bit of my theory about long-run tire management and race pace theory, but he still managed to hold it out. Good victory for him, good drive, perfect execution of a strategy that I'd say is a little aggressive. They had to be. They had to really watch. And this whole race was really a combination of tire wear degradation, what strategy we're going to go on. Were you going to start medium, soft, soft? Were you going to go soft, medium, hard? There was a lot of different options there, and it all evolved. So I would imagine there was a hell of a lot of calculators out, and Red Bull threw down the marker on their strategy, what they needed to do and needed to Max execute, needed to perfection. So a good race for Max.
Yeah, it was definitely a long game race, wasn't it? I liked it. It wasn't, spectacular racings per se, but there was a lot of stuff going on, and you knew that every drive. These drivers know this track super well. Yeah. They're not learning any of the corners, right? So everything is down to perfection in every corner for every lap, not taking enough out of the tire, making sure it lasts as long as they can make it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I think, obviously Max getting by Russell was very important, and Norris not able to in time. Norris needed to kind of literally follow Max through, and then I think it would have been a whole different race. But Max being able to separate himself from Norris, who was obviously, his closest competitor, was probably the move of the race, really, and allowed him just a little bit of, margin to run his own race rather than be pressured from behind. Yeah, and that may be the difference. Obviously, that the difference in the finishing time was not very much. So split-second details played out over a 2-hour race, really.
Yeah, it really was. Sergio started down 11th due to his Canadian Grand Prix penalty, was able to make a 3-stopper work for him to get back up into P8 and into the points. Sergio admits, and this is kind of interesting, kind of offered this mea culpa. He said, look, at the end of the day, I've got to do better. Or I think he said, we need to do better on Saturday on qualifying so I don't give myself so much work to do on a Sunday, and Saturday has to be improved dramatically.
Sergio.
Yes.
I'm sorry. He's got to leave. If I'm Red Bull, I mean, I like Sergio as a driver. He's been impressive, but he's lost something, and I don't understand the re-signing of Sergio, because all the other teams are just pushing new drivers. Just people like getting the cusp of their ability, really the top of their game. And Sergio is not there anymore. Yeah. It's gone on too long. It's not like, he needs to pull up his bootstraps. I think he's just doesn't have the edge that he used to do. He used to be a phenomenal driver, and he could make tires last, et cetera, et cetera. But every weekend come back and say, I got to do better in qualifying. Too much.
Yeah,
it's too much.
It is.
And Red Bull, I don't think he's going to last the length of that 2-year contract. I can't see it, but I think Red Bull have made a bad decision in keeping Sergio on the team. I really do. Yeah,
you wonder if they didn't miss the driver market here, because there's going to be a lot of shuffling this year.
There is.
So to see what you could pick off next year is going to be pretty difficult.
I mean, Sainz would have been an amazing pickup, but
Carlos would have been an amazing pickup.
But I think it's probably everything to do with the relationship they've had before,
Yeah,
and
probably.
Max, I'm sure Max has a way to block it, and I'm sure Red Bull if we keep Max, we always have a champion in our car.
Yeah,
right. But it just makes it a lot harder for the team to win a team championship if you have a weak number 2. Which Sergio's getting weaker. He's not getting better. He's getting weaker.
Yeah, and so you wonder, you could have taken a punt on Esteban. You could have gone after Pierre. You could have gone after some of these other drivers that that are slotting in or moving around. So, and seeing if it would give a shot at a better result. But anyway. Let's talk about McLaren. Lando Norris in P2, Oscar Piastri in P7. Lando had a slow start, allowing Max to get right up alongside him into turn 1, but it was really George Russell who took advantage of the huge hole in the air that Lando and Max created when they were side by side, sucked up in that slipstream, allowed him to slingshot around both of them and take the lead. Max had the inside line of Lando, got ahead of Lando, and this prompted the team to immediately come up with a different strategy. So I assume it was different. They tried to run that very long first stint in the hopes that they would have fresher tires late in the race, and that would give him a shot for the win. Unfortunately, it didn't work to give him a win. He trailed Max home in P2, but on the flip side, it did work enough to slot him into P2 and start to try to hunt Max down, which he did, close it down and trailed Max by 2 seconds at the checkered flag. Although when he got to the paddock, he was very upset with himself. He said he threw the race away with a bad start. He knew it. He thought that was his race to win. that was a bad deal, not happy with himself. And they were saying, oh, he's really down on himself. But, the reality is, if I'm honest, Paul, I love to see that he's upset with himself and his start, because I love it to see that Lando is to the point, and so is this team, that he's not happy when he's not winning, instead of him just being thrilled to be on the podium, right? That was the last 2 years ago or whatever. He'd just be elated to be in P2. Not now. This team and this driver is pissed off they didn't win this race.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a whole different mindset for a team, Paul.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, it was quite a start there. And what do you think about putting Max on the grass there? I mean, that's hard racing, right?
Hard racing. Yeah.
It was pretty hard. It was
hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're buddies outside of the car, so it's be interesting how they do talk about those things at the end.
Yeah.
Max didn't seem mad, but he wouldn't be, would he? Because he won the race anyway. But
it was a la Schumacher-esque.
Yeah, yeah. I think once that shook out, I think the strategy worked to give him a shot again to Max.
You think they optimized whatever circumstance they were in?
I think it was when they were.
Yeah.
I think things could have shuffled out. We had a little difficulty getting through those other cars.
Yep.
One lap behind, whoever is the difference between perhaps being on Max's tail in the last lap rather than 2 seconds behind.
Right.
So it was really, as I said, it was all about tenths of a second here over a 2-hour period that really made the difference. So I think he drove his arse off.
He did
in every segment to make that work and give himself a shot, and probably makes him madder, that because that showed what his potential was in the actual race, even though he came from pretty far back. So it's great to see him.
He looks good in the car, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean,
watch his onboards, man. He is driving his butt off.
He is. It's great. I mean, between him and Max, they're they've got their cars by the scruff of the neck, and they just do what they want with it, right?
If you have time, go watch Max's onboard. I mean, you could hate Max, but if you go watch his onboards, it's wickedly impressive what he's doing in the car, and so is and Lando's the same way. I mean,
they both take everything out of the car, but no more than they need to. That's some of the subtleties may be hard to see if you've never driven a Formula car and things like that, which is fair enough. But they're literally not extracting anything out of the tire. They don't, but they're extracting everything they can. Mm-hmm. So it's great to see them in sync with us. So them two battling is phenomenal, really.
And that's a really good point you make, because I think this is the difference between Lando and Oscar. So Oscar had tough qualifying, tough race. He also ran that long first stint, but his fresher tires did pay off. They allowed him to pass both Alpines to recover back up to P7. It's good. But to your point, Paul, I think the last couple of races is showing us the difference between Lando and Oscar. We know that Oscar has sheer pace. He's wicked fast. He's incredibly talented. Got a very level head on his shoulders. I really like Oscar a lot. It's just getting his head around the tires, the racecraft of F1. And to be fair, it took Lando and Charles and Max a little while to get on top of all that. So when you look at the delta between Lando and Oscar, what you're seeing, I believe, is just Lando being in the series longer, getting his head around F1's racecraft and what it takes. That's where Max is at the pinnacle of that. Lando is rapidly getting there. I think Charles Leclerc is rapidly getting there. Max is there. I think it's going to take Oscar just a little bit of time to kind of get that. And I guess, Paul, it's one thing to do stuff on sim, but that's got to be a skill set that you don't really get until you're out banging wheels and racing.
No, that's right. And some things just take time.
Yeah.
It's so close that these things are instinctive, not being forced or forcing yourself to do something. It's going to be just, and as you say, Lando had 3 years in Formula 1 before Oscar came.
Yeah.
Oscar's definitely in that talent pool up the front there, and he will be there, and he will get it figured out. But Lando didn't figure it out till a certain point, and but Oscar's going to get there. But yeah, they're on kind of a different level right now. But I certainly think the pairing is impressive. And once Oscar gets a bit more experience, it will close up a little bit, and then McLaren will really have something.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think a huge part of it is just getting your head around the tires. The tires are such a mystery. And you take a guy like Lewis or Max, or I think Oscar's got his head around it now. Charles took him a little while to get his head around it. But I think these drivers I'm talking about, Carlos, I think these drivers I'm talking about have really got their head around the tire windows, the tire management, and what they have to do. I think to your point, which I think is really good, is that they all may, even the veteran drivers, D-Rick, Bottas, all these guys, they may definitely have their head around the window, the tire windows, the optimal performance and grip levels, and how narrow those windows are and all that kind of stuff. But the delta here between them and a guy like Max and potentially a guy like Lando is, to your point, that they're not taking, they're running every parameter of that car to its 100% and no more.
Right.
But when you execute everything at 100%, it compounds to be a race-winning car, you know? Yeah. Let's talk about Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, P3, George Russell, P4. George had a great start, past Lando and Max to take the lead, but he just wasn't able to hold off a DRS-fueled Red Bull pass from Max. Couldn't hold him off. But yet, interestingly, he did hold Lando back there quite a while, longer than Lando would want to.
Much to Lando's chagrin.
Yes, exactly. And I think George was having a hell of a good race. It's unfortunate where he finished, because I think he would have been P3. He had that slow stop, and then the team fitted him with the hard compounds, which didn't set well with his chassis, and he lost ground to Lewis, brought it home in P4. And I do wonder, because as we go through the race review, there's other drivers who fitted hards for the final stint with similar results, and I do wonder what George might have done had they fitted softs at the end to do that. But you say, well, he finished in P3, but I think that betrays a little bit of the race that George really had going on there.
Yeah, I think he had a great race. I mean, you know, he overextended himself, got in the lead, fought it off, was feisty with Lando more than with Max, but Max didn't give him a choice. So Lando's kind of probably pretty annoyed at that. But yeah, once they fitted the hards, he was kind of dead. And he could just kind of had to finish the race. And obviously Lewis got by him because of the difference in the tire or whatever. It was a bad call. And once they got him on he was the first one to pit, so he was the first one to figure out that it was a bad call. Yeah. But you know, you got the hands that dealt you. It wasn't a disaster, but yeah, I think the podium was his for the taking if the team had kind of run the strat. But I don't know what tire allocation he had left. Maybe he didn't have a soft.
Maybe he may not have. And so that could be the case. Lewis does finish on the podium. He had a harder time of it, though. He had a tough start, he said. Lost out to the undercut by Carlos Sainz, but he blocked it out, put the bit between his teeth, and on fresh tires in that final stint, scythed his way back through the field, enough to take care of the Ferraris and George to secure his first podium of the season, which is great. So it was a fantastic drive from Lewis. He was really happy. I saw, there was a lot of white noise this weekend over this alleged internal email that was floated out. And I saw some comments after the race saying, the team, orchestrated a podium for Lewis over George. And, that's just to tamp down on the rumors that they were trying to scuttle. Look,
come on, people.
Yeah, I have no way of knowing if the email is even real or not. I don't know. So I'm not saying I'm right on this, but because the very position a team is in the Constructors' Championship is worth millions and millions of dollars, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think it's highly unlikely that they would want to do anything that would befall Lewis, right? Because they want both. They need both cars to finish as humanly high as possible on that Constructors' Championship to capitalize on the most prize money. And if if that's even true and the rumors are true and Toto's not happy about him going to Ferrari, well, that's fair enough. But Toto's no idiot. I mean, he wants to finish as high in the championship. So I find the whole thing a little dodgy. And I think it, to be honest, it kind of takes away from a little bit of what kind of drive I think Lewis actually put in on Sunday, which was a great drive.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't high school.
Yeah.
Talking about boyfriends and girlfriends, whatever, this is multi-million-dollar business, people. This is high-stakes stuff. They're not going to get petty because he's breaking up with you right now. I mean, he's had a history in that team, and I think there's a lot of respect, and I think there's a respect to what Lewis wants to do next. And but they're going to maximize. They're not going to give him information that he can use against them for sure, but they're also not going to hold him back from scoring points for the team. Especially right now, it's super competitive. Every point's going to count against McLaren and Ferrari. They're not going to do that just because they're upset with Lewis. So I don't believe a word of it. I don't know where it's coming from, but just proper teams do not. They're too big to even go into those conspiracy kind of stupid. And it's just I don't know. I just in one ear, out the next. But
that's kind of how I treat it.
It's how people want to be nowadays, I suppose.
Yeah, right.
They always want to find something inside something else.
Yeah, it's kind of how I treated it. And so I just think all this internal email whistleblower stuff is getting a little out of hand. So anyway, great race for Mercedes. Fantastic to see them back on. And I'm saying this, I'm super excited for McLaren and Lando, and very excited that Mercedes has figured out the front wing and has come on song to see George and Lewis mixing it up, the cat amongst the pigeons. And I'm saying this as a Ferrari fan, so very happy for them. That's great. Speaking of Ferrari, you had Charles Leclerc in P5, Carlos Sainz in P6, compared to the Canadian Grand Prix with a dual DNF. This was a banner weekend for the team, but compared to the other teams and all of their upgrades, this was a tough weekend in my mind for Ferrari. The team split strategies with Charles on a long first stint, Carlos boxing early to cover the Mercedes duo. The team put Carlos on hards, and he struggled like George did, losing a spot to Charles and Lewis. And then they had Charles finish the race on softs, and like Lewis, was able to make his way forward to P5. So in the end, George and Carlos drew the short straw on that strategy with the hards, while Lewis and Charles did better. But then they had the Carlos and Charles came together, and then Lewis and Carlos had how'd you see all of that?
Oh, I thought it was all just hard, good racing. Carlos is funny. He's like a Spanish robot.
Yes.
A very sensitive Spanish robot. Why did he hit me?
Yeah.
Please,
Why
Ricky,
do we have rules?
tell him, read the book, please. Please, Ricky.
Ricky.
But, so I didn't see anything untoward out of any of those things. I mean, you're going to fight for a corner. They're going to come out a little bit.
For it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was nothing egregious, I don't think. I mean, he has every right to back out and not have to fight for the corner. But when you go in there, mano a mano, then, stuff's going to happen.
You're going into that corner with Lewis.
Yeah.
know your enemy.
Yeah, or Charles or whatever. It's
not going to scare Lewis. He's not going to bail out of it.
Yeah, it was close. And sometimes just, who chose the right positioning to go into the corner, who comes out then at the other side a little cleaner. It's not like anyone was doing anything. Anyway.
Yeah, overall impression of Ferrari this weekend, though?
Close, but not close enough, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they came with a lot of upgrades. You say no upgrades, right, this week? Ferrari.
Or a few. I can't recall if they had any.
I think for some reason.
You were thinking none? Okay.
Yeah, but
maybe
I
not.
Could be wrong. I had other things I was thinking about too. But
you were busy.
We're racing against other Ferraris elsewhere.
Yeah, but, I have no excuse, but you were busy.
Yeah. Too much longer, I think. Everything's super close, and it's just that the Mercedes and the McLaren just kind of jammed themselves in that gap. It would lot long ago. It would have been the Ferrari was so close to the Red Bull this weekend.
Yeah.
But it's just that it's jammed in there now. So everyone is on heightened alert, I would say, and Ferrari just need to find that little bit of magic there to get them back in it.
Kind of interesting for the teams that did the hards on the final stint, because I was trying to go back and I ran out of time. I was trying to go back to Friday practice. I just don't recall the teams doing very much hard compound running at all.
I don't think they get much hard allocation. So I think sometimes the hard is kind of a roll of the dice.
It's kind of a big gamble, though, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. It is. And it just depends how they played their use of their tires through the weekend. You know?
Yeah. Kind of a big gamble.
Always a game. And, you know, maybe it seemed weird that they put the hards on so late.
Yeah.
If they had if the soft could go 20 laps, certainly on a light fuel load. So just seemed late in the game to play that game. But
Yeah. Alpine, Pierre Gasly, and P9, Esteban Ocon, P10. Another dual points finish in P9 and P10, exactly as the team finished in Canada. Pierre had a decent start, moved up one spot, then had that slow stop that cost him all the time he'd gained. Despite that, though, he did keep Piastri behind him while he was trying to hang in there in the midfield, in the middle of the race and limit the damage. But then he lost a place to Piastri and a recovering Perez who came through the field, but still dragged that Alpine, that overweight, bloated Alpine back to P9.
Yeah.
So not a bad result for Pierre. I thought there for a little bit in early stages, kind of a middle, keeping Oscar behind him. I thought, this is looking kind of racy.
Yeah. I think it's very impressive overall. I mean, as you say, overweight elephant, well, it was overweight. At the beginning of the year, it looked hopeless. I mean, embarrassing for a factory team.
Yeah.
But, they've clawed their way ahead of 5 other constructors right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty impressed with whatever they're doing in the engineering side of things, fixing their initial woes of design woes and knuckling down. It's not easy to do. We saw McLaren do it. And make a jump, but it is impressive what they're doing, and I hope they keep building on that.
Yeah, I do too.
They shouldn't have been where they were, but they've kind of leapfrogged Aston Martin at this point. And it seems to be a bit more consistent. I think Sauber kind of still down there pretty far, but
and RB.
Aston Martin are definitely struggling, and they've kind of slotted themselves in there as maybe the next best team, at least for the last couple of races. I think they're definitely showing signs of respect again. Yeah,
well, they finished ahead of RB, Haas, and Aston, so it's really good. And a watch this space is 2026. One of the key things I think that Alpine's struggling with is their engine's down on power, and I think it has been this last iteration. So 2026 is an opportunity to rectify that.
Unless they're just buying their engines from somebody. Isn't that the rumor?
Yeah, right.
Which is, that would be insane.
That would be insane to be Renault and not make your own engines. So, they've won world titles, Renault has. So it'd be silly if they couldn't do it. So watch the space in 2026. It's a chance for them to get it right. Esteban had a decent race too, did well to hold off Nico Hülkenberg's charge late in the race, kept him behind him for a final point. So fair play to him. Paul, I think in the end, you hire the guy as a consultant who orchestrated Crashgate, and they start scoring points. How about that? You get Flavio in there, and
he spread some magic on that rear wing or something. I don't know what Flavio does.
Here he comes.
Jesus Christ.
There he is. So he comes in, and boom goes the dynamite.
Yeah, I think, he probably goes in and changes the catering first. Maybe that was the difference. The croissants were wrong. It was all wrong. More pasta, less snails,
more crepes.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Let's see. Aston Martin, you brought him up. Let's talk about him. Lance Stroll, P14, Fernando Alonso, P12. Fernando said Aston Martin needs to do a lot less talking and a lot more developing. Get a little frustrated over there, Paul.
He is, He's from the buoyant We will all be on the top 3 for the rest of the season. Not so long ago.
Yeah, he's getting a little frustrated. He had a tough first lap, running wide into the escape road, losing a few spots. The team struggled with high tire degradation all weekend. Two-stopper on hards on the final stint. That was never going to work well. It didn't for Carlos or George. It didn't for Fernando. That didn't pay dividends for him. And then both Lance and Fernando said that they struggled all weekend for pace. And oddly enough, there was a lot of degradation, but I think both of them said the degradation was really high on this chassis.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely hasn't progressed or kept up with the progression of the other teams. I'm not sure where that's going awry, but Alonso.
What's the crack doing?
Yeah, exactly. Probably, hopefully working on that Valkyrie car, maybe that's what's going on. There's a diversion there.
He's getting ready for Le Mans next year.
Yeah, exactly.
For those of you who don't know, Paul, the team that Paul's with, Heart of Racing, will be running the Aston Martin and Valkyrie in the hypercar class next year at Le Mans. So just so you're in the know.
Yes. So hopefully we're not the distraction for the Formula One team, but.
Yes.
So I don't know what's going on there, really. It's
tough race.
Yeah, it's kind of, they've shown a little signs a couple of races, but really it seems to be consistently that they're kind of not up to that level that they had heightened themselves up to not so long ago. So
if you're Lawrence, you got to be thinking, I'm paying a fortune for a 2-time world champion, and we are wasting this opportunity.
Right.
Wasting it.
Which is why you're trying to fill Red Bull's designers' pockets full of gold.
Yep, trying to get
Not
Adrian.
Sure he has enough though.
I don't know. Adrian's got a pretty hefty price tag on him.
Yeah.
Haas F1, Nico Hulkenberg P11, Kevin Magnussen P17. Kevin had a penalty for a false start, and Nico had a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. And I'm kind of thinking, in my mind, had Nico not had that, he may have had a shot for that P10.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that might have been a point. That's the difference. It's a shame because Nico actually looked pretty good early on, Paul. And he said that ultimately they need to improve their qualifying so they aren't left with so much work to do on Sunday. It sounds like a familiar refrain. He could probably spend some time with Sergio Perez and discuss that. And then Kevin was just a tough day. I didn't have a lot of notes for him. Just a tough day.
Yeah. I mean, going back to Perez fighting with Hulkenberg, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not a good sight picture he wants to see, but
I'm
sure Nico does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty good. So 5 seconds in the pit lane, extra stop, but that can be the difference between points and no points. So unfortunate for them, but this. I don't know how much higher they can qualify, really. I think they do a really good job, really. There's not a lot of margin there to get in the points right now. So
now we're talking about tenths or hundredths of a second.
Yeah, and they're close. I think they just need to keep doing what they're doing, and the Hulk will figure a way to get it done.
Yep. Let's see. Kick Sauber in the privates. Valtteri Bottas, P16. I'm sorry. Joe Guan Yu, P13. Teams split their strategies, had Bottas on soft, hard, while Joe was on soft, medium, hard. And neither of the strategies worked very well. They both ended up on the hards in the end, and we've already talked ad nauseum about what that impact was. The hards were no friends of the Sauber, that's for sure. They had very high degradation. They said prompted their early pit stops because of the high degradation rate. I don't know. On the balance of it, it may not look like it, but in my mind, I do think they had better pace here this weekend. And for a while, it looked like Bottas was running P10, 11-ish there for a while. And I was thinking, I don't know if the strategy's right, if Valtteri's in the right mood. Maybe they could nip a point here or there, but didn't happen.
Yeah, they still never. That's kind of.
I was optimistic.
Say about this team, I don't know.
Yeah.
They as I said, they're a team treading water till the Audi rings start getting emblazoned on the side of the vehicle. So.
A team without a home.
Yeah, I mean the drivers don't know where they're going or if they're staying. Well, I'm pretty sure.
Well, one of them knows they're going.
Yeah, one of them knows they're going. And I think it's just a team in transition, and they're just trying to get through it. And with that's a tough place to be.
It is.
You know, there's not aspiring to greatness or, this is our ladder to excess. You know, with the you got the board out there with the, with the arrow going up. It's like, this is where we're going, guys. Like, well, we can't really talk about where we're going because we're actually going to be a different team. So we'll just go from race to race and get through it,
Yeah, it's always tough when you go through acquisitions and, how much deference does the acquiring company have with the existing company? And I'm sure there's employees that don't know what Audi's going to do. Are they going to be there? Or there's a lot of things up in air. And you'd like to think that Audi come in and say, guys, we just really need to be focused and everything's going to be fine. And let's really put it, but, they don't want to go in and upset and hand out false expectations. So I don't know. You're right. It's a tough place to be.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, even tougher place to be is RB. Dan Ricciardo in P15, Yuki Tsunoda P19. Dan beat Yuki again this weekend, despite Yuki getting a better start and running ahead of Dan early on. Unfortunately for Yuki, like Nico, he got caught speeding in pit lane, had a few F-bombs, and then he had a penalty that dropped into the back. His race is spent. Dan had a two-stopper, did manage to pass Bottas and Magnussen on the way back through the field, though, and then time ran out. He ends up down at P15. This, for me, Paul, might be one of the more disappointing stories out of this weekend because they brought a whole slew of upgrades this weekend, and all of those upgrades all came together to basically hurdle the team to the back of the grid.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, well, hopefully they can it's not always a negative. I mean, it's a negative, obviously, but you can always turn it into a positive if you understand why.
Why?
Or understand what you can do to then progress. And anything you bring in new has a progressive cycle, right? So just because it's new doesn't mean you're going to have it maximized when you first use it. Sometimes you have to use it, understand it, then know what to do with it. So, yeah, it is a bad race for them. They threw a lot at it, but hopefully, and I would expect it to be, that they learn a lot about what these things do and can't do, or how to best utilize them maybe in a different way to maximize the usage. So, I don't think it's always like a disaster. Oh, we screwed the whole car up. Let's start again.
Right.
It's, hey, let's just figure out what parts work, what don't, and how to make those new parts that weren't working well work.
And it could be on spending in Austria, spending some considerable time on Friday, utilizing a hell of a lot of flow viz and running long runs to figure out, okay, the part itself is performing, but in combination with the chassis, with this setup, it's not optimized. Right. We need to make these changes. And like you said, hopefully they can finesse this into getting this team back up the sharp end of the grid.
Yep.
Let's see. And then finally, I got Williams, Alex Albon down at P18, Logan Sargent P20. Logan had a grid penalty for impeding that had him starting at the back of the grid. And then Albon started from pit lane after changing some engine parts overnight. So they were both dead last. Starting there, then Albon started on mediums. He gambled. I think he may have been the only one to start on mediums.
Yeah.
Had a trip through the gravel. And then, he was kind of stuck it back, and Logan struggled with degradation, calling it one of the toughest races that he's had so far was because of degradation. And he's had some tough ones. Yeah. Don't I know it?
Yeah.
So really tough. And Alex said, just it's our aero and our weight still a major issue for us. And it's really tough. So
yeah, I don't know the contracts there, Williams, but
I don't know.
I would say there's a 50-50 shot of Logan Sargent making it out of the summer break.
Yeah.
That team cannot afford to just have a seat filler in there.
Yeah,
I feel bad for the guy, but he's just not at that level.
Yeah, right.
It's obvious.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Maybe he's got a future somewhere in sports cars or whatever.
Good.
He did decent in F2, obviously, but He's not at that level. Albon is at that level, but the car is right now.
It's not.
That was trash. Sounds trash, you know. So they need to figure it out. Maybe it was one of those tracks they were never going to be good at. I don't know.
Yeah,
we know it's the Williams car is not a all car for all seasons kind of vehicle, and maybe this track is just one of those ones it doesn't work out.
Yeah, right. Let's do some awards. The first award of the podcast is always Move of the Race.
Seriously, Todd?
Yes, seriously. All right, Move of the Race. What'd you get, Paul?
All right, so I am going with George on his repass on Lando. Much to Lando's chagrin, and maybe it cost him winning a race, but I like the tenacity.
Yeah.
You know, so many people are just, you're gone through, go ahead, whatever. You know, but George was a fighter, man, and he fought back, and he saved some braking, he saved some power or whatever to repass Lando, and just be that thorn in his side, saying, "Hey, you may be beating me today, but just remember, I'm still here, buddy." You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had George. I think it was George. Maybe I got it wrong. I think it was George on Leclerc where they passed each other 3 times.
Oh.
In turn 3, I think it was.
Okay, I don't remember that one.
Wasn't that? Hold on. I got to consult my notes. If I can reach them, if I can reach my notes. You've got me doubting myself, Paul.
Are you thinking you're talking about the same incident?
I might.
Yeah.
I might be talking about the same incident.
Could have happened.
Talk about yourself. Yeah. Norris on Russell. Passing 3 times. Yes. Same incident. Sorry.
Okay.
I wrote down Charles. I don't know what I was thinking. Yes. I had the same thing.
Fake news.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Gosh, I had to go to mile just to come up with the same answer you did. It's terrible. Gosh. Yeah, that was brilliant. The back and forth 3 times was
great. Yeah,
a lot of fun. And it wasn't DRS fuel, which is great.
Which is always a precursor.
Always
for a
good.
Move of the race.
Yeah. All right. Next up that I can screw up is Donkey the Race.
We'll do it live.
All right, Paul. Donkey the Race. Who'd you have?
Sorry, Sergio. I do not like your pace.
Man,
You like my face? You like it?
No,
I really don't.
no, not impressed. Well, I'm going to go broad picture on this. I'm going to give it to, I struggled, either RB with all of their upgrades not working or Ferrari, who now have McLaren or Mercedes well into the hunt ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem.
Yeah, there's a problem.
So for me being a Ferrari fan, I'll give it to Ferrari. I think that's tough. That's tough. All right. Well, the final award happens to be Drive the Race.
Get down.
It's an race.
Yes, get in there, Lewis. He's on the podium. What'd you have for Drive the Race?
I got Lando.
Of course you do.
Was he the famous world pick? Did he win the prize on the TV?
I don't know. But you know Lando, he's a different category.
Different category.
Totally. It's one of my favorite
Such a bad soundbite.
It's one of my favorites. I'm sorry.
It is.
Can't help it. So yes, I had Lando too. It was a great race from him. Yeah. So anyway, all right.
I think him and Max are on that level right now.
I do too. I think they're thereabouts. Yeah. And I gave Max the nod because he's got 3 titles under his belt, but I think they're right there. So
yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, that does it for this podcast. It's what we think about this race, but tell us what you think about the race. You can do that by going to our website, theparkforme.com. Share your opinions. Do it decorum civility. If you like this podcast, you can go and give us a good rating. Give us some love on your favorite podcast player. Spread the love. Tell your friends about it. Share it. That would be even better.
Yeah.
We'd appreciate that. And also a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because without you, we would not and could not do this podcast. And if you're a Patreon supporter, you will get a link to our live recordings of the podcast where you can join us as an audience and interact with us. And so absolutely, if you've ever thought about supporting us, that would be much appreciated. That
alone.
Oh, it's worth the price of admission.
Oh, my goodness. You kidding me?
Of course. Yes. Mm-hmm. So anyway, really appreciate your support. We couldn't do that without you. Paul, you you ready for the Austrian Grand Prix? We got that coming up this weekend.
That's right.
It's a tricky old track.
Yeah, I'm actually at home this weekend for once.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I get to see everything in real time.
Yes. Got so much
exciting. I like that track. It's good. It is
a good track.
It's fun.
I like it too.
But as we know, if you don't get it right, you're way off.
Every single quarter you got to have spot on.
Yeah.
Home of Red Bull, so it should be an exciting race. Got a lot going on. Got MotoGP, got Formula One. I got the Tour de France starting.
Oh boy,
got a lot going on. Then I got to go to Belgium soon. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, until we come back next week to snag Paul and get his insight into the Austrian Grand Prix. Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camper, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. I don't feel I've got to prove at all. I don't really want to prove anything. I started as an amateur with no idea or no intention of becoming world champion. I was curious to find out what it was like to drive a car fast, to drive on a certain circuit, to drive a certain type of car.